Good morning, everyone. Nice to see everybody this morning on a golden sweetness morning. This is going to be a little different than what we normally do for a red tea. And we're really going to start off with Science Corner first. And the reason we're starting off with Science Corner is you know how I like to use large words and throw those about. I get to do that right off the get-go. So last week, Rob asked a question about color of tea. So this week, I've immersed myself in the color of tea. And by the way, what is meant is the color of the tea liquor, not the tea leaves. So for green tea, why is green tea sometimes greener or lighter green or has a tinge of yellow? There is a chemical reason for it. And just as you might imagine, there is a reason related to varietal. There's a reason related to terroir. All of these things, in addition to the processing, influence the final result. So with green tea, now here's the fun part. We get chemistry and so forth. With green tea, if it's greener, that is a darker green, that means it has more chlorophyll A in it compared to chlorophyll B. Those are two compounds. The A compound, if there's more of it, it's greener. The B compound, if there's more of that, it's less green. And then if it has a little bit of flavanol in it. Now, why would a green tea have a little bit of flavonoid glycoside? Because it might have been slightly oxidized. Knowing, of course, that green tea is unoxidized, that would have been perhaps unintentional. So the flavanols add a tinge of yellow. So that's green tea. Red tea, yes.
Flavonoid glyphosate? G-O-Y.
No, flavanol. F-L-A,
Flavanol, N-O-L.
Yes, N-O-L.
Glyphosate?
No, glycoside.
Sorry.
Yeah. The red tea, which we're going to talk about today, in terms of coloring, sometimes you have darker, closer to black. Sometimes you have lighter, closer to orangish. And you've seen that in the variety of red teas that we have in here. What are the chemical compounds that are at work there? Remembering, of course, that no matter what the chemical compounds are, there are the issues of the varietal, the terroir, and the processing. All of those are going to determine the color of the tea liquor. But what chemicals are really involved? So you've got theaflavins and thearubicins. These are our old friends. We've talked about these many times. So theaflavins tend to have a little bit of a brownish color. They add a little bit of a brownish color. Thearubicins, on the other hand, add a reddish color. So you have different amounts of each of these, and these influence what the color is going to be. But there's two other compounds which also play a role in the color. And I haven't talked about these before, so this will be absolutely new information, and it'll be hard to spell, so that means it'll be true. So theophytins, P-H-E-O-P-H-Y-T-I-N-S, and theophorbide, P-H-E-O-P-H-O-R-B-I-D-E. So particularly the theophytins. And what are these things? I mean, it sounds like every week I come on and make up a chemical term. You better check and see if that thing really exists. but that actually does exist, and it's a degraded form of chlorophyll. In other words, as chlorophyll degrades, it degrades into these two compounds. The phyton lends black color to the tea liquor. So these things, so among scientists, there is this so-called ratio between the phytophthorbides and the thiorubigens. And the greater that ratio is, the darker the tea liquor will be. Okay, we're all done with science. I had to get that out of my system. The rest of this will use simple words, unless I forget, and everything will be crystal clear from the start. So let's talk about shop news. Shop news, and by the way, before I get to that, thanks for the question, Rob. It was really fun to go through that. And I'm still going through some other science articles related to color, particularly of some of the other styles of tea. So in terms of shop news this week, we had a younger student from China, from Shanghai, who came into the shop first time, and she's looking at the boards, and she does the right thing because she says to me, okay, I need some help. And so I got her flavor profile, and she sat in the corner and she got a crimson needle. She's drinking this thing, and I exit the room, and then she finds the tea master. And she says, you know, I've been here at a university, local university, for 2 or 3 years. And I've only drank tea, and I've looked for tea shops, and I've never had anything that reminds me of home in terms of quality and specialness. And she ended up having another tea as well, and was just absolutely blown away, because it's not the expectation of a tea enthusiast from China to be able to come here and get stuff, not stuff, but tea that they might not even be able to get in China. So this was a nice experience, and it's a great segue into what we're going to cover today, because golden sweetness. Now, I wonder a little bit about this tea. Well, let's first locate it. It's in the Wui Mountains. It's in the Tungmuguan area. So this is this gated area. And I sent you a picture of the gate. And I sent you a picture of some farms within the mountain. And also a picture of a poster with deadly snakes on it, just so that you know that I'm not making this stuff up. And by the way, that's right on the border between Fujian province and Jiangxi province. And you'll see not Tungmuguan, but you'll see something called Feng Shui Guan, which is right on the border. So that's what they call it from the Jiangxi side. They call it Tungmuguan. And the village is actually on the Wui or the Fujian side. So I sent you those. I also sent you a picture that has a long bridge spanning a great chasm filled with plants and so forth. Wait a minute. And that and so forth is really important, because that and so forth is poisonous snakes and other dangerous animals filled with that. So this was built, I've forgotten what year, I think in the 1990s, opened it up for the public to go and explore the forest, which is across the bridge. And they then quickly closed it down after about 6 weeks, because so many of the people that went into that forest did not come back, and they could not find them. So it's a very dangerous area because it has a huge amount of poisonous snakes per square whatever. Some of these snakes, instead of behaving with normal snake behavior and just be on the ground. Some of them live in trees. Very deadly. Yes.
I remember seeing this bridge in area before. Would you remind us which other teas we've had from this specific area?
Oh, great. So this question is a great question because I've sent bridge pictures before. And the questioner says, I must have done it because we had other teas from this area. And you absolutely have. So Smoky Pine, Victory, and Golden Sweetness. Now, I've talked about other teas that we don't serve here. In fact, one of the most famous ones in all of China, something called Golden Steep, that also comes from here. And this is going to be very important in a minute because I'm going to reference that particular tea back to the pictures in a minute. So Golden Steep, let me think about that a minute. I believe the Chinese usually call that something like Jinjunmei. Now, is the Golden Steed a good translation? It's not my translation, so I won't feel injured if you know a lot of Chinese and you think, that's a terrible translation. It's an accurate translation, but the issue is the name actually is for a different reason than the putative name Golden Steed. So what do I mean? Jin Jun Mei. Let's focus on Jun for a minute. I sent you a picture of both the tea master and myself sitting with an individual who's looking straight at the camera. And his name is Liang Junda, and he and two others, and he lives, by the way, in the Tumuguan area, invented this tea, Jinjumei. Invented, created a hybrid called Jinjumei. And we met him at this farm where we were visiting. And he happened to come up with his wife. His wife was sitting with him. And so we had this really interesting conversation with somebody who is one of the most famous people within the tea industry in China. And we sent you several pictures of him. So the picture where we're sitting in with him, he looks amazingly young. The subsequent pictures, he's aged a little bit, but that's natural. And he is so famous that within the province, and in fact, within the country overall, that's China, he's considered a national treasure. Jinjunmei isn't the only tea that he's invented. So the Jun, while it means steed, was really taken from his name, Liang Junda. And then the Mei is eyebrows, which references the delicateness of the tea. Now, some of you are thinking to yourselves, and politely haven't said it yet, this sounds like a long digression from Golden Sweetness. In fact, it's not. This individual comes from the area where Golden Sweetness comes from, and Golden Sweetness influenced how he ended up doing some of his famous hybrids. So this area is famous for all these small varietals. So I ask you this, do you think you would be able to find Golden Sweetness in the market here in the US? And the answer is unlikely. I did a quick search yesterday. I did find it in the market in Germany, but that's the only place I found it. I don't believe you can get that anywhere else. It's small varietal not all that much is done. And let's talk about what it takes to get a pound of it. So in order to get a pound of this tea, 70,000 hand motions have to be made. So the pick, it takes 70,000 picks to make a pound. So what are they picking? They're picking a tiny bud and a tiny leaf or two. And that's why it takes so much. So you see the pickers in the fields come in, and instead of the big baskets that you've seen in other areas where we've gone and we've taken the pictures, the leaves are gigantic, and so it doesn't take 70,000 hand picks to create a pound. They're more like 15,000 hand picks, which is much less, right? These are tiny. And many times the pickers will roll up, as you saw, their clothes, their frock, I should say, and put the tea leaves in there and carry it this way back into the farm. It is a very difficult thing to pick. And there are rules, of course, of picking this. And the process is basically this Gunfu red process of Fujian province. So there's a lot of handcraftedness in this to get to a final product. And you may be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm sure he made a mistake. He meant 7,000 hand picks, not 70,000. The answer is no. And so the other thing you would naturally want to ask is, well, then there's a mistake on the board in terms of the pricing, because how in the world with 70,000, let me do the math on that. That's a lot of hand picks. How can this be so relatively inexpensive? It's relatively inexpensive because it's not known really outside of this area. Jinjunmei, on the other hand, is very well known. And there's a place in Phoenix that serves it for $50 a cup. That thing, Jinjunmei, is extremely expensive because it is well known and it's famous and the Chinese like it. This thing is not known. And so the tea master and myself, when we went to the village, we liked the taste of it. So I ask you this, is it in any way related to Jinjunmei? The answer is it's in the same family. So you have Jinjunmei, which is a bud. You have another same varietal, which is a bud and a leaf. And then you have this, a bud and a leaf or two. All three related. But nobody really hears about the third one. Their eyes, fairy dust gets in their eyes with the Jinjunmei. And they go for that every time. We, on the other hand, discovered this and were able to get a great deal on this. And that's why we have this in the shop, and that's why you won't find it anywhere else. Yes?
What is Jinjunmei referred to? How is it called in English? Or is it?
Golden steed sometimes. For the most part, you see the lousy English translation of golden steed. And again, the reason it's lousy isn't textually lousy. In other words, you look, Jin, yeah, that means gold, golden. Jun, steed, yeah. Mei is eyebrows, so let's just call it golden steed. So contextually, it's not a contextual translation. It's a literal translation. Contextually, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with this inventor whose name is in his given name, Junda. Jun is that character, which means golden steed. But he doesn't refer to himself, oh, I'm golden steed. No, it's Jundan. All right. Lots more to talk about, including how in the world in general does one come on rare teas like this? So we will delve into that question. And if I can find any big words between now and then, I'll be sure to use them. In the meantime, the tea master has indicated to me that she is very thirsty. And she's guessing that most of you are also very thirsty now that I've led up to what a special tea this is. So without further ado, let me bring in the tea master.
Hey, good morning, everybody. 早上好，每个人。I do red tea golden swings，不得拿金句梅golden swings so we don't have 金句梅。If everybody like next time, I bring some 金句梅。Okay, so take a look Today, so we use glass. This is my tea tray. You can, if you like, you can, follow me. So let's jump here.
So this is her starting tableau. So 2 cups, a supply cup, a strainer. The cups are clean, but they're going to be heated, and the tea master will put hot water in. And the reason being is just in case there's a soap stain on it or anything else is snuck in, we want to make sure that nothing interferes with the aroma and flavor.
Tell us again what the pick was on golden sweetness,
This is an early spring pick,
and what is exactly being picked? Bud?
a bud and 2 leaves. So when you heat the cups, you're using any temperature water between 212 and 175. We tend to use closer to the 212. And the reason is we like to get those leaves heated more quickly, but it doesn't matter. This isn't such an essential detail that you gotta measure precisely. All right, so the tea master has heated both cups. She's going to draw 175-degree water. And remember, when you're brewing, particularly red tea, even green tea, some of the delicate whites, you want to air. We give a temperature, but you want to air on the side of cooler. And why is this important? And why are we so different from other tea purveyors? They give you greater ranges of temperatures, sometimes very mechanically, but they're not dealing with this level of tea. And that's why they don't need to be as precise. When you're dealing with this level of tea, precision is important because we know, and what we've done over the years is developed a process that is in line with what Chinese tea masters say, hey, this really replicates the taste that we think is the best. And that's what we're trying to give you. All right, so you notice that she's dissipating the steam, aerating the water. And this is, you're not doing this yet, but she just pulled from her bag number 3, and she's going to put it in one of the heated cups. And that's 4 grams. And this is a 3-minute steep. This thing gets 3 steeps, 3, 2, 2. And you notice that she's smelling the heated leaves. That gives you an opening round of understanding of these leaves. She adds the water. start the timer. Yes, 3 minutes. All right. Yes, and she heats the recipient cup. Perfect. So in general, in China, if you were trying to get rare tea, how would you do it? And I'm not talking about you, but how would the local person do it? Would they just go to the grocery store and pick up tea, you know, go to their version of Whole Foods or Berkeley Bowl and pick up tea? The answer is no. They could go to those places and pick up cheap tea, but they can't go to those places and pick up rare tea. Impossible. Yes.
Very sorry to interrupt on the steeping time. So the website says 322.
Which is what I just said.
Your email says something different. Your email says the first steep is 2 minutes, the second steep is 1 minute. Which one do you think people should
It's
follow?
322. That
322.
that was an error on my part. Yeah. That was an error on my
Yeah,
part.
here
I
is
can't
one, yeah.
believe that I made that error. At any rate, yes, I can, because I am the understudy, and understudy makes these type of errors, unconscious errors. I apologize. Good catch. All right. So we're talking about rare leaves in addition to understudy errors. And how does a person in China get access to something like this? A, they don't know it exists. B, they don't have time to go to the farms and search out. What do? They go to professional tea purveyors. And professional tea purveyors are the ones who know. These would be tea shop owners, by and large. Sometimes they are tea literati. In other words, they are in the field of tea, either as scientists or even sometimes farmers. They'll know where some of these rare teas are. And I think I may have mentioned to you before, but it's worth mentioning this again. I was in Hangzhou one year, and I was consulting for another company, and part of the work we did was with the mayor's office in Hangzhou. And so I met the vice mayor, he had his translator with him, and we're talking about Hangzhou was famous for, and he's talking about Dragon Well and all of this stuff. And I mentioned that they also do red tea. And the vice mayor says, oh, no, we don't do that. And goes on and talks about all the other things. And in the meantime, his assistant is busily on his phone, looking, and looking even closer. And it's like he whispers in the vice mayor's ear. The vice mayor says, apparently I'm wrong. We do red tea. My point being is, unless you're in the business, you're not going to know these things. By the way, 3 minutes just passed. Tea master separated the leaves from the tea liquor. You get a first sensation of what this tea is going to be about. Wonderful, wonderful aroma. You're going to tell me what that aroma is. And then you're ready to look. And the first thing you do is you look at the colors. You look at the tea liquor, the color, transparency. Look and see if there's anything else in there. There must be some flavonoids in here. Oh, probably some theaflavins as well. That's what you learned this morning. And you take your initial smell and then sip. And the sip is a 175-degree sip, which means you can take a little bit more than what a 200-degree inhalation would be. And you're trying to coat your tongue. And we'll talk about what you're looking for in a minute. So there's several things you're looking for right off the bat. And these are quality arena items that you're looking for. What's the tongue feel? You're gonna get a sensibility of where on the tongue you're getting reaction. Are you getting a reaction in any other part of your mouth? Is it thick? Is it thin? Is it soft? Is it mellow as you swallow? Is there some part in the throat where it catches? Do you have an aftertaste to this? And what are the energetics? These are all things, all items that belong in the quality assessment, the quality arena. And because I want to make sure I did a good job on the first time, I've got to take a second sip. You see, we're not in a hurry. We're deliberate. We're really trying to think about and observe both the feel and then lastly, the taste and the aroma. So these are the things in a minute when you brew with the tea master that you're going to be looking at. And it's really important to do this in a deliberate manner because that way you'll get the essence of this tea. So your turn to brew. So the normal rules apply here. You're going to heat the cups. You're going to make sure that your tableau is set up the way you want it. You already have the 175-degree water ready. You have your strainer ready, and you're setting the timer for 3 minutes. So Tea Master is heating up both cups, making sure everything is absolutely clean. Ensure that the strainer has no miscellaneous leaves left on it. And now she's drawing the 175-degree water. So what she's going to do with this is dissipate the heat, dissipate the steam, I should say. And somebody mentioned to me, structure the water. I like that term. Yeah, structure the water. And it's funny, when you do this enough, you start to have a hand feel for what about 175-degree water is. It takes a bit, but eventually you know, oh, wait a minute, I must have drawn the 200 degree, or wow, this is much less than 175. So you'll get there. So you're opening your bag number 3 labeled Golden Sweetness. You're getting ready to pour it in the cup that you just heated up. You're going to shake it. And then you're going to add the 175-degree water. Actually, it's less than 175 now, but we'll call it 175. And you'll heat the other cup up. Oh, and yes, I'll hit the timer. You heat the other cup up. Just let it sit in there. Okay, so let's continue the story about how you get specialties. In China, you understand as the local population that you're not the expert in tea, but you can find your expert in tea, and the expert in tea will help you find what you need. This is when you're drinking at this level. So that young lady who came in this week from Shanghai was drinking at this level. And that's why she found it so disconcerting in the beginning with other tea shops. Can you get me this flavor profile or this style profile? And she wasn't really able to find what she was looking for. Whereas here, we've modeled after that Chinese sensibility of, yes, we have lots of different flavors, and you give us a flavor profile. And if we have it, we're going to be able to identify it and get that to you. And that's really at the highest levels how you do tea. Yes.
These are tiny, and they separate into tiny floating leaves at the top and larger or spindly on the bottom.
Leaves are tiny, and they separate themselves to the tiny ones at the top, and absolutely right, the larger ones at the bottom, standing up, floating down. It's a beautiful, beautiful cup. Absolutely right.
Lots of filaments, a sweet aroma of dry leaves, a cloud of swollen leaves hanging above that sweetly scented liquor. But my broth is more reddish.
Oh, that's interesting. Lots of filaments, lots of going up and down. But this particular commentator's conclusion, looking at the broth or the tea liquor, is it's more reddish than this tea liquor. And there's any number of possible reasons, but usually where we start with is the water. There may be some difference in water. Otherwise, I don't have a particularly good explanation without actually being there. All right. So is there anything up? Before I ask that question, the timer has gone off and the tea master is going to separate the tea liquor from the tea leaves. Deliberate, not trying to make a lot of bubbles, in fact, trying not to. Making sure that all the water is out. Very nice color. Again, I would call this almost a yellowish gold. Just beautiful, just beautiful. So you start off, let's see what the leaves are like. And remembering that this is 175 degrees, you don't have to be, you use care, but you don't have to be so careful as with a 200.
The aroma of the dry leaves was fruity, like plum or cherry. The wet leaves aroma harder to pin down.
Great observation. Dry leaves, fruity, plummy, cherry. Love that description. The wet leaf aroma is hard to pin down. And that is true. This is why you go through this exercise step by step by step, because it's an adventure. And eventually you'll become so good, you'll recognize these things so fast that when you smell, I kind of know where this is going to go.
Smooth, sweet taste after the first sip.
Smooth, sweet taste after the first sip. No question. No question.
The these have a malty scent, but the tea liquor has ever so light, subtle hint of oolong to me.
So the teas have,
The tea leaves.
the tea leaves have a malty scent, but the flavor has just the slightest suggestion of a relative of oolong.
Nicely viscous mouthfeel.
Nice viscous mouthfeel. Yes, this absolutely has a nice mouthfeel to it, and it covers, good catch.
A soft astringency on the tongue.
Soft astringency on the tongue. Very good. And for me, by the way, while you're continuing to think, that soft astringency is lasting. In other words, as I'm talking to you here, I'm still feeling that soft astringency on the tongue.
I sense almost like a little bit of citrus in the aftertaste, like a lime or a lemon.
A bit of citrus in the aftertaste, like a lemon or lime. And so what this commentator and what several of you are identifying is that somehow there is some fruit element going on in this, and it's not so distinctive. So if you think about divine plum or radiance, which we had recently, you get that plumminess right away, and you get it at full throttle. This, though, it's subtle. And the subtleness, it plays with you because the leaves themselves seem to suggest one direction. And then when they're wet leaves, they seem to suggest something else. And then as you taste through it, oh my God, what is this thing?
Liquor is hard to pin down. The wet leaves were sweet and floral. The aroma, mineral, chlorine to this one participant. And the liquor is neither.
So there's a big discrepancy between, for this commentator, between the wet leaves and the tea liquor, and the overall sensibility, which I think is a really correct and accurate one, is that the tea liquor is hard to pin down. And you have to kind of keep playing with it in order to tease it out. And that is true of this. And you know, some teas, you don't have to play with them at all. Again, they announce, here I am, and here's what I am. This one doesn't do that. It gives you all these clues, and then when you get to the tea liquor itself, that's why devolving first to the quality arena while you're going through this gives you the opportunity, okay, well, it's viscous, I got that astringency, it's kind of mellow, yes, I get the energetics. As you're thinking through this taste component, because it's really complicated with this.
The tea liquor is eminently pleasing. It's a smooth
Good.
transit from the lips to the swallow.
Good. Love this comment. And this comment really gets us on how we should start to think about this. Eminently pleasing. So this commentator combined all the quality assessment and used eminently and then pleasing. And that's great because it's a comforting feeling. It gives you almost, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, none of you has used this word, so this is my word today, grounding. So, like where you've gone with this, this is not the easiest tea in the world to judge, but it is very easy to say it's really pleasing. It's really good to drink. And so if you're trying to introduce somebody to loose leaf red teas and they're used to tea bag, this is a great stepping stone because A, comparatively speaking, inexpensive. B, it gives all these different clues, and so it opens the mind of a new tea drinker to some possibilities. And 3, at the end of the day, it's just comforting.
Exactly the word that one of your participants just used. Comforting, but not lulled into sleep. Interesting, but not drawn into distraction.
Comforting, but not lulled into sleep. Interesting, but not lulled into distraction. Love that description because this is what you want. Now you're beginning to really get into the complexity of this. Remember, I didn't tip you when we started this. I didn't use complex. I didn't use anything to head you in one direction or another because I knew that you were going to get here. It is complex and it is pleasing and it's interesting. In some ways, you could very easily, if you were distracted by something else, end up drinking this very quickly and thinking, well, now that was good. Now, why was it good again? Because it's that easy. It sneaks under the radar. Again, it doesn't announce itself. It just sneaks in and it's very pleasant. Yes.
It's really good, but I couldn't tell you why from a flavor perspective. I'm truly shocked that we're all stumped. If silence, I think, crowd is an indicator. Another commentator says that, hey, I think this is why Sophie's introduced me to their teas with golden sweetness when I first came to the shop years ago.
2 great comments. So the first commentator said something to the effect that given the fewer comments than usual by the crowd, it's really interesting how this tea is stumping everybody in terms of a flavor description. And again, that has to do with the complexity. The second commentator said, yes, they remember this was one of the first teas we gave to them. And there's a reason, because you cannot go wrong with this. Nothing offends you with this. So this is, again, on that route to exploration, on opening a portal door. This is a great identifier of the door handle. And then you enter the portal. Yes.
How does the farmer get the overshadowed tea to the market?
So how in the world does the farmer get this overshadowed tea to the market? Well, only insiders really buy this tea. Part of it is there are enough insiders in the area, particularly local people, who are drinking this up. And that's really how it's going to market. Nobody is helping the farmer who does this type of tea. In other words, there isn't provincial help, there isn't local help in terms of advertisement, because it's such a small varietal. And you used the correct word. You said it's overshadowed by both the Golden Steed and then the next one, which is all part of this family.
On energetics, I get warming, comforting experience enhanced by a subtle aroma of honey.
Warming, energetics, a subtle hint of honey in this. And I like that because you're now homing in the way that I would think about this. Comforting, warming, and a subtle hint of honey. Why does a subtle hint of honey work so well with this? Because A, it covers, okay, a little bit sweet, not a lot sweet, a little bit sweet. B, a little bit fruity maybe. So honey gives you that big category because there's so many types of honey that you can use to cover what's going on in here, including the viscousness. Because when you drink a little honey water, right, coats the throat and so forth. Well, this is coating as well. Love that description.
I have a slight tingling sensation in my mouth where the tea liquor first hits, and I also sense some air grassiness in the flavor profile.
Oh, that's interesting. So slight tingling where the tea first hits the mouth, in the mouth, and a slight, just an air of grassiness. And I like this description as well because it's rare that people are able to taste down to that grassiness. It is there. There is no question, but it's not a lead, and you only get that after you slowly go through and figure out, well, what in the world is the total components of this, and grassiness at the back end. So honey covering a little grassiness. Great.
So if this is with 1 to 2 leaves, with one pick with 1 to 2 leaves, is 70,000 picks. How many picks are required for the bud?
Oh, the bud only is even more, except let's back up. It's not that much more. You know why? Because they let the bud grow larger. So this is a volume thing. So I just about fell into that trap that you very suddenly out there put out. And then I suddenly came to my senses. Yeah, the buds are significantly larger when it's bud only.
Honey has a terroir characteristic to it as well. I don't know how that plays in for this tea, but it's interesting with the honey connection.
Oh, that is an interesting comment, because honey does have a terroir connection, because so honey from certain places where we grew up, there used to be acacia honey, and that was very specific to where we grew up. And you're right. So the flavor, and this is a better comment than you even realize, I think, because the flavor of this tells you, A, it's in this family. This family can only come from this area. And so, yes, that's a really sophisticated comment, because it tells you that you're already beginning to link disparate elements to start to understand the terroir of this area. All right. We love this tea, and we love the fact that we're able to bring this to you, and we love this complexity. And this, if we had started out with this, we'd have had a different kind of session than we have today. So by going so deep into the sessions and then having this, plus you've had several reds recently, so you have contrasts. And these contrasts help you zoom in, narrow in on how to start to distinguish reds. It also helps you identify what elements of the red do I really like. And so it gives you the range and helps you zoom in. So that's one of the reasons we like this. By the way, do I have time to do this? Yeah, I do have time to do this. This red is made in the Gongfu Fujian style, which means it's picked and withered for however long the farmer feels appropriate. So don't ask me a number, because every farmer is doing it differently, and they're doing it based on smell. They're doing it based on where in the mountain they got it. And by the way, this will be a small digression. I talked about why you go to a tea owner in China to find things like this. It's because they know these details. And so we know at this particular farm that the taste of this is going to be roughly like this because of the location on the mountain. They are about 5,000 feet above sea level, between 5 and 5,500 feet above sea level. This mountain consistently, that's not the right word. This mountain periodically gets snow, but it doesn't stay on the ground for more than a day. So that is the terroir setting. And by the way, it isn't on volcanic soil. So the result is that in other parts of the Wuyi Mountain where you get the cliffs and you have this huge volcanic minerality, you don't get that here because it's in a different set of the mountains. So let me explain to you, the Wuyi Mountains, just like the Sierras, is a range. So if you go to the beginning of the Sierras, trick statement, because who knows, it depends whether you're starting in Death Valley or somewhere else, and you go to the end or in between, is the terroir going to be the same? And the answer is no, it changes. The Wuyi Mountains is the same situation. That's why when we discuss within the mountain, when it comes to cliff teas, all of us, every single one of us knows that that means, oh, I'm going to get some minerality. I am excited. This is within Tung Wu Guan. Tung Wu Guan has Tung Wu Guan de terroir, and it's different. Yes.
How do pickers survive the snakes?
This is a really great question because it reminds me that I forgot to tell you the other huge crop in Tung Wu Guan is actually bamboo, something called moso bamboo. They make some huge amount of money from this big old thick bamboo. And what they do is, you can't really tell from the pictures. It's really hard unless you go there, because when you go there, the farmer points, do you see that bamboo growing over there? And what they actually have is a bamboo separation between the farms and the village. And most of the time, the snakes stay on their side of the line because they know coming over the other side of the line, there's going to be violence. And so that's how they keep, for the most part. Is that 100% protected? Some snakes don't read very well, and they just come straight over the line, and then there's issues. Yes.
Pigs then wither, then.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I got distracted. Picked, withered, because you remember you're trying to make the leaves soft and pliable, and then it's rolled. So there's no heat process aside from natural heat of the sun between the wither and the rolling. At the conclusion of that, they pile it. Now, again, you're going to ask me times. It's different by farm. So every farmer has a different set of rules about that. And there isn't a universal. It's universal that they do those steps. And at the end, they bake to stabilize the tea. However, are there any secret steps in between? Clearly, between the piling and the baking, there are some finer rolling going on. But I can't tell you much about that because I've heard the description, but I've not seen it with my own eyes. But you know that in general, when you get the Kung Fu style, that means there's more hand processing that's going on. And it's very delicate because these leaves are very delicate. All right. I've enjoyed this session with you today, and I really enjoyed it because you didn't try and set the course of the tea. Instead, you allowed the tea to lead you on this journey. And that, as great tasters of tea, is what we always must do. Xiaobei and I, when we walk into farms, we don't go with preconceptions. We go with a heart of exploration because we don't know what to expect. And we've come to understand that things that we think we know can be challenged every time we go to a new farm, every time we get a new tea. And we're open to that experience. you all were open to this experience this morning, and you showed it and demonstrated in your commentary. Congratulations to all of you. Great, great job. All right. This is the end of this series, but next week we start a new one, and we start it with a brand new green. So for those of you who've been reminding me that, you know, what's wrong with you? We haven't been doing enough greens. We're going to be doing many more greens over the next 2 or 3 months. So we start with Tree of Life next week. So hopefully all of you who can make it will purchase that one. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Be safe this week. I think we're on the downhill side of this Omicron. So let's make sure that we get through the week without getting sick. And I'll see you next week. Y'all take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.